What is home care? Home care is a care option that allows an older adult to live in his or her own home and be cared for by a professional. Home care services can often vary, depending on the older adult's health scenario. They can include things like personal care, bathing assistance, transportation, and specialized Alzheimer's care. Home care is also flexible in scheduling, ranging from a few hours per day to around-the-clock service. Most providers will create a unique care plan tailored to the needs of the individual. Then from there, a schedule is set for a professional caregiver to arrive at the appointed times and provide one-on-one care in the home. The three most common reasons for home care: 1. Life enhancement through social interaction and companionship. This includes such things like cooking meals, playing games, and transportation to appointments. 2. Acute care for chronic conditions such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease. 3. Safety of having someone to provide personal care and administer medication, reducing the possibility of pandemic exposure. To find out more about home care, visit homeinstead.com.
Okay, well, very good. We're back. Just in case you were wondering, listen, we've had some really good discussions today, and the last one, if you're looking at the image on your monitor and you're going, wait a minute, there's people the same on this one. That's true. There is. You didn't do anything wrong. And it's Dee, and we'll talk about Dee again in a minute because I know there's some people on for the first time. But we had such a good discussion that last time that she's still here. And
she likes to talk.
And, she does a good job talking, too. She reminds me of somebody. I don't know whom, but she reminds me of somebody. So, again, welcome. This is our second annual No Place Like Home Conference. I'm Mark White. I created a law firm called Idaho Estate Planning. We do estate planning. We do elder care. We work with families in particular, and we really, really try hard to avoid the crisis, or at least be prepared for the crisis. We talked yesterday about this. Mike Tyson, that philosopher, the boxer.
Yes, of course. I know
and he bites people's ears off.
Yeah.
He said something that was brilliant. He said, everybody has a plan till they get smashed in the face. Mm-hmm. And you know what? That's so very true. But if you don't have the plan, you don't have a place to go after that. Mm-hmm. So we try to get families to work on that. We have a couple of sponsors. We want to say thank you. Home Instead and Blue Cross of Idaho, the True Blue Special Needs Plan. And we're here at Garden Plaza at Valley View. I mentioned this earlier. It's one of the few places I've been where I got yelled at by old people. We were scheduled here to play the Old Man Band plays, and we were set up, and they were playing cards in the next little portico, and they came and asked us to turn it down. I didn't even think they could hear it. And so the whole thing for this conference is kind of a multi-generational approach. I know that two of us at the table today have been if not still are, in that sandwich generation. I won't speak for Sarah just yet. But we've got kids that we're concerned about, and we've got parents that we're concerned about, and so trying to throw out a little bit of help to do that. So that's what we're trying to get done today. And now we're going to talk about how to come up with a plan. A lot of work. We got work to do. I was exhausted after the last session just listening to all of the things. Oh my gosh, I don't think it's any better.
Imagine doing it in a crisis, emergency.
And I think I said that exact same thing. Is like, oh my gosh, oh yeah. So immediately to my right is Dee Childers. She was with us just a minute ago. She's the owner and the life care manager at. Hold it just a second. We don't have your.
Life Changes Elder Care Consulting.
Yeah, I knew that, but it wasn't right here, so I was lost. So that's talk about a crisis. I just crisis avoided.
We pitch hit. That's what we do in caregiving. That's what we do at the table.
Right.
Right.
Oh my gosh! And your plan at 7 o'clock in the morning isn't necessarily the plan at 7:30. And so
Or 7:01.
yeah. So we moved forward from that. Dee was in the corporate America for a number of years. We won't
A
say how
long
many.
time.
We won't say all the years.
Okay,
just,
good.
Just a little
I
bit.
appreciate that.
Which, by the way, as a working in human resources, which you may not think of this right at first, but if you think about it for a minute, is great training for what you do now.
It really is.
Because you are maneuvering, you are negotiating and mediating and
Managing risk.
and very good, very good.
Yep.
Now you're a life care manager. You do mediation. I know you've been involved with the Alzheimer's Association. Got a support group for the early stage. Anything else I should mention?
Just that we are, the easiest way to explain what a care manager is we're like the hired daughter, except for we have experience and expertise to help you navigate the path. So.
And I think one other thing that the daughter has that's really hard, and that is that emotional attachment. I'm not saying you're not emotionally involved, but you can take a step back and make some decisions, or at least give some help, where the kids, we can just be blinded a little bit.
A client's daughter the other day said, "Oh, thanks." When I said, "No, you're here. You're here at this point." "Oh, okay." She just needed a little clarity there.
Yeah, no, we're not done, and I'm not doing it all. Yeah, we're only here. And Sarah Lowe, I only met just a little bit ago, and so thank you for being here.
Yeah.
And grandmas are the best. That's all I'm going to say. Grandmas are the best.
Yeah.
Talk about having the casserole after the funerals or whatever. That was my grandma. Oh my gosh. Holy cow. And so you have recently created Emerald Senior Care.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's a home care agency, but what I envision it to be is more, educating and connecting people with resources. So yes, home care, I love home care, but I want to educate people on all the things out there that they can and should take advantage of, before they get to that point of home care.
Yeah. Your background, your educational background is healthcare administration with a particular concentration on geriatrics.
Right.
I know that you're very passionate about what you do. In fact, both of you are very passionate about what you do. I'm very passionate that the two of you are passionate about that, because
I'm passionate about that too.
I got enough to do. I can't do everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
yeah.
We're a team, and we have to do what we specialize in and use our expertise. And I'm not an attorney, and I'm not a caregiver, although sometimes that's debatable.
you are, yep.
So yes, we can be part of a team.
Yeah. Well, and the team, I was thinking of this earlier. This is really kind of silly, but they talk about certain athletes being the greatest of all time. They're the best, whatever. And the last I remembered, nobody won any of these games by themselves except tennis and wrestling.
Right.
But basketball, football, baseball. You still need the rest of the team because everybody has a gap, whether it's we don't see it or we don't have the training, whatever it is. Anyhow, so very good. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for both being here. I think what we're going to try to talk about, we talked about recognizing or developing, well, recognizing our support system, because I don't think people do.
Right.
I just think they walk in, and so many of them are, one, exhausted, and two, they just know they have to do it by themselves. Whether it's birth order, or whether it's because they're a spouse, or whether because mom or dad made us promise, whatever. So this is in my brain, I guess. This is the next step. Got a network. Awesome. That's why I was exhausted when I said, okay, so now what do? You got a network, so what? And you said, well, you know, you got to have a plan, and then you got to fit the players in. So talk about a team. When you put together your network, that's a pretty big team. And so that takes a little bit of work.
True.
So tell me, how do we start? You know, you sit down with my wife, and she's, you know, trying to take care of mom, and she didn't know where to go. We get the network put together. What's the next step? What do we do?
Well, you know, I think that a lot of us think that the plan needs to start when there's a crisis. And I think the best time to start the plan is before there's a crisis. And this is the plan with mom and dad. This is the plan with you. And this is the plan with, you know, your adult children with grandchildren. So we all need to have a plan, because stuff happens at any point in time. So this is not just the late stage of life. This is about any time something can happen. And so to think about, not only are we focusing on plan A, but when it gets right down to it, we kind of need to have plan B and C, because undoubtedly plan A, something will come in. So the best plan is what you hope for, but we do have to have A's and B's and C's. And so I think information is key to planning.
Yep, I agree. My father actually, so he's not an elderly person yet, but he ended up with wet macular degeneration. It very quickly went blind, and their whole world went upside down. And so there wasn't a plan in place. All of us kids were kind of scrambling and, you know, figuring out what are we going to do to help support them. And I think it's important to figure it out ahead of time, and that way it's a lot smoother. Not
A lot
perfect,
easier
but
to implement.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's less threatening too, because
Yes.
now we're being proactive about it. This is like at some time in the future, we have a plan in place. And so part of that plan does start with, you know, agreeing to talk about things that we need to know, which is, you know, my father said, here's the file cabinet. You're my financial power of attorney. Here's the
Oh, good
file
luck.
cabinet, and here's everything you need to know. And 6 months later, I dug myself out of the hole of all of the accounts that he had and all of the investments in the bank accounts, and it was a quagmire. So when I talk about planning in that regard, I talk about a lot more detail in the plan, and being willing to share information. If your loved ones have decided they want you to be their representative, i.e. their power of attorney for either healthcare or finance, then hopefully they're willing to share their specifics with you. And so gathering data is really important initially.
Okay, so you said something that struck me, and I think we talked about it a little bit in the last session, and that is we can't plan around dad. We can't plan around mom.
Right.
They've got to be a part of the planning. And so seeking the permission,
Exactly.
and that's
Again,
right up front.
Right.
And doing it sooner before there's extra emotions involved in it.
Right.
We get calls all the time where it's like, can you meet me at Starbucks? Mom doesn't know. Don't bring any paperwork. She doesn't know.
Oh, my.
We're setting that up to fail. So having that conversation, it helps, you know.
And long before it's needed. So it's just, we've normalized it.
Yeah.
And that is probably one of the most helpful things. Have it early when it's not necessary, so that you've normalized it. Everybody knows we talk about these kinds of things in our family.
Right.
The people who, you know, you might want to keep it narrow. Maybe there's just certain people that you want to know about your finances. And that can be the financial power of attorney, but at least they have some sense of what that looks like, so that when, they've hopefully been to attorney and done some estate planning, and we know coming into when there is a situation, how long can we keep somebody at home with care? How long, when might they need to make some alternative arrangements? So planning is about information gathering up front, and that's financial, it's health-related information, because we're always going to ask you what's your H&P or your health and physical. So we want to know what your diagnoses are, what are your medications, who prescribes them and for what and how much, and who your practitioners are. And that's like just foundational. Everybody should have that. We need to have that list. So we kind of go through the process of information gathering and sharing with those that they're comfortable with.
Stephen R. Covey, efficiency kind of a guy, he talked about getting up in the morning or the night before and putting together your day. Here's what I'm going to get done today. And he said, after you get all that done, I don't care if you use that again. Because you've set your priorities, you've gathered the information, you at least know what needs to be done. And so it seems to me that it's a very similar thing. And what you just said sounds huge to me, even if that's all they got done, was to get all that information. They're so much further ahead than, 99.5?
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, Sarah, that just makes your job easier if you have even that much information.
And it makes it better for the person. We know their favorite things. We know how they like their coffee in the morning. We know who to call when there's an emergency. We know all of that ahead of time, versus coming in and they're already in crisis and now they're frustrated because we didn't take the trash out and the dog didn't get fed and whatever else, those little things that people don't always think about.
Dee, you talked about last time about, they didn't get the right stuff at the store, right? They got the rice, right? We got rice, but it wasn't the cheap
right
store brand, or it wasn't the more expensive.
Yes.
And so getting that information, which, what do you think? That's not a one-time. It's not a one-time deal.
No, because it evolves over time, and that's fine. Nothing is going to be perfect and forever. But it's a start. So it's easier to take something that we have and build upon it. I've gone through so many different diets in my life, and plant-based right now, so that all the meat section would have to come off.
I'm sorry about that.
Well, it didn't last long.
Send it our way, right?
It did not last long. So fortunately, I've learned just create versions. Don't edit the same documents.
Yeah, there you go.
Save as. Then I could go back and add it on again. And the same is true, with us the rest of our lives. And now we're on low carb. So, even just, it's amazing how knowing just people's food preferences goes a long ways with making people happy, because that is a happy thing for us is eating. So knowing what that looks like.
It is for me.
Yeah.
It seems to me that there's a temptation here, that if you spend a lot of time with mom or with dad, you don't need to ask all those questions because you already know. It seems like that might be a little bit of a trap.
Yes.
Big time. We also find that mom and dad are often more willing to share with us or accept advice from us than they are an adult child. I mean, it's a role reversal very quickly for people, and it's hard. People don't like that. So knowing ahead of time and bringing someone in that can help, and just setting all those things together of what you want it to be, the whole thing just goes a lot smoother.
Yeah, I've found that even though I'm the estate planning attorney, that I really don't know much about estate planning. I found that to be the case.
But you at least get them set up to hand off to the next step.
Yeah.
It's like an assembly line. Each one of us have our own piece of it, and together it makes something work really well. But you start getting them out of line, or you're missing certain parts of that assembly line, and
okay,
the product
so
doesn't work.
Let's say somebody's listening and they go, great, I know to get going. We schedule a time with mom and sit down, and what do we do?
Well, I think when it comes to this kind of planning, I think we have to start at kind of a core foundational piece, which is seeing an attorney and getting your
Yes.
advance directive set up.
You have to know what you can afford, what it looks like for you, so then you know what your options are.
Right. And you start the process because literally once we turn 18, we should all have an advance directive because it's no longer default. Mom and dad by
Agreed.
law are our decision makers. We need to decide who we want to make decisions for us and then have conversations with them about what kind of decisions we would want them to
Yeah.
make if we were not able to. And I think, that people misunderstand between healthcare and finance when, healthcare, nobody has that right to make decisions for you unless you don't have the capacity to do it. Either you're in surgery, you've had a traumatic brain injury, whatever it is, you don't have the ability to make decisions. Versus financial, we know is different. So we need to make sure everybody understands the role of those very important documents, and then we need to share them with the people that
Yes.
have that authority, as well as our healthcare providers and hospitals in our area. It doesn't matter that I tend to go to St. Al's. Luke's needs to have it too, because sometimes if it's a cardiac event, they're going to take you to Luke's. If it's trauma, they're going to take you to Al's. And so you want to make sure you're prepared. To me, that's just a really foundational piece of the plan is estate planning documents.
Okay,
Agreed.
let's say that we got them moving, and they came in, and we visited, and we have a pretty long conversation. This is not just a, one and done. There's some work to be done. So we got that part, and that's huge because should tomorrow Dad wake up and is non-communicative,
Right.
we now know who can step in and make financial decisions and who can step in and make, healthcare decisions.
I've seen kids come from out of state, all of a sudden there's some crisis, and they're like going through every drawer. I don't even know where she banks. Look at all these checkbooks, and I don't know where the money is. What should I pay out of? Oh, wait, I don't have the authority to do that even. And it's just this confusing, scary time for them.
Yeah, we've been there with some folks.
Yeah.
Now, a cheat, if you will, is that there's a number of places where you can upload your documents to the cloud.
Right.
Not just healthcare documents, but you can also upload a financial power of attorney, a will, or a trust. Those documents can be uploaded, and then with a card,
Which is going away. Sorry.
well, it's transferring, right, in Idaho.
The registry is transferring, but you will no longer, that card will no longer
Oh my
do
gosh.
anything for you.
Okay.
So it's not, you don't have a password and a username that's given to you, and that has just come into effect like this week.
Oh my
At
gosh.
the end of this week, that changes. So the registry, Mark is talking about the Idaho Registry for Healthcare or for directives, and that's gone from the
The Secretary of State.
Secretary
Which
of
was really an
State.
interesting place to have it, in the
but
first
They
place.
probably said, okay, we'll do it, to health and welfare. So
Yeah.
that has all moved over there. So some changes happening right now you'll hear more about. But the bottom line is there's a place that those documents have, can be uploaded to that are accessible by those that need to have access to them.
We use a private group that does that, and so our people are still hanging on to the card, which is nice to have, by
Right.
the way.
Yeah.
And so there's that's a little bit of a cheat. We have the electronic copies that people can have. These things are available, and hopefully we'll get them past the. I don't know what we're doing. All right, so we got that step done. What next?
For me, I think the next thing would be to have that conversation. Does it make sense for the adult daughter to just, she's going to be the one that's going to handle everything while she's working and raising 4 kids? And
Well, of course she
has to go to
is.
soccer and everything else. Or does it make sense to talk to someone now, like Dee, that can help you kind of organize all the moving pieces? Because it's a lot for one person to manage, let alone when you're managing your own life. And it often creates kind of tension between families, and we see problems with relationships there.
Oh no, it's impossible. It's
Yeah.
not just difficult.
Yeah.
That's impossible.
Oh, yeah.
And so the expectation is very often that's the plan. What's the
Right.
plan? Well, you know,
Dee will do it.
yeah.
Yep.
Dee will step
Yep.
in and she'll take care of Dad, and that's how we do it. And that's it. That's the whole
Right.
thing. So you're suggesting that we might start there with that conversation.
Because a lot of the questions she's going to ask are going to drive what the next steps are going to be. You know, they already know, okay, this is what the finances look like. And now Dee's going to start asking these questions of what do you want your life to look like? What do you envision when you think about retirement? And so that kind of shapes everything else kind of coming in to play, I think.
All right. So, yeah, but tell me how you do it. It's a sit down? Is it the whole family's together? Is it just me and Mom and Dad? How do you see this happening?
I think it really depends on your family system, because families are so different, and there are some families. One prominent family in town that I was working with, and when we had meetings about this kind of stuff, 8 of them showed up, and they were effective meetings, and people learned things about each other. And there are other families that would have been a total disaster.
Oh, yeah.
And so we start small. So we need to look at the dynamics of the family system. And so it might be just a couple of people with another person who's kind of mediating, taking notes, and asking good questions. And once it's resolved or kind of agreed upon amongst the two of them, then you might take it out the next step. So you have to look at what your family dynamics are. There's no, this is another time, there's no one way that works.
Dang
it's
it.
just something has to happen.
I about had it down here, and now you're
Yeah.
telling me I don't. Okay.
Well, So for me, one of the things that I make my life decisions based on values, and it took me a while to get to this place. But it was not Covey, who's one of the other Chicken Soup for the Soul guy.
Oh, yeah, I can't tell you.
Successful strategies.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
And doing the work about values, I found so incredible to help me make decisions in my life. And I think that's true about how we want our lives to look at any point in time, but certainly in decisions about medical and decisions about where we want to live and decisions about who we want in our life, we need to get clarity about what our most important values are, and have conversations with people about that. So we do healthcare power of attorney for people who don't have anyone. And so we literally have a formal process we put them through. And these folks tend to be younger, in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And they're like, well, why do I need to do this now? I'm young. I'm not going to die tomorrow. It's like, well, one, you don't know that.
I hate to be the one to tell you, but
And even more difficult is you don't know that maybe you'll just have something happen to you where you do not have the ability to make all of your decisions on your own now, so you need help. So let's make sure that people in your world who will be helping you with these things understand what's the highest priority for you. And sometimes, it's not one of mine, but living in my house through the end of my life is often one we hear.
yes.
And yet, I find that home is a state of mind where you feel comfortable, where you have your important things with you, where you have memories. A house is a container, and it's not the only container that works. But if it is, then we need to really understand that and see, is it a home that can be modified if need be? If you've got, a walk-up of 2 stories, that's probably not going to work for you as you
Tiny
age,
little
'cause-
bathroom doors and you can't get in.
Right.
Or the washer dryer in the basement.
Yes, with
Yes.
rickety
Of a
steps.
1960s home, and yes.
And a rug
In
right
the
on the
north
top
end.
of
Oh,
it.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
and there's
yeah.
scary stairs,
Yeah.
and the only way you can turn the light on is if you can find, the string somewhere.
While you're balancing.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
My grandmother's house was the coal-fired furnace. And so rickety stairs down underneath, that opened up, and it was black, and there was coal dust, and there was coal, and a few times we had to go pitch the coal into the furnace,
Furnace, yeah.
and that's just scary. But that was her home. That really was. And man, she was very intent on staying there, and it made it very difficult for everyone else.
I think sometimes, people have this vision, well, a lot of times in their head of that's just a nursing home, and whatever vision it is from maybe it was 50 years ago of what they saw, that's still stuck there.
Yeah, Sarah, some of us remember 50 years ago,
So,
and we had that experience.
Well, and assisted livings only came around in the 80s.
Oh, I know.
I mean, we think
Yeah.
that that's just been there, but no, I mean, and you look around in this community, they're very different. They're not nursing homes. These are independent assisted living communities, and they are communities. They're not facilities, and I really want everybody to quit using that word, because we're not housed. We live in community. And, you get to choose how much you participate or not. But I think it's more important to figure out what's the most important things in your house. What is it that I realized this when I lived in Florida, and Hurricane Floyd was coming, and I had to prepare to evacuate, and I had to figure out what I was going to take with me. And I looked around at all my stuff, and I went, oh my gosh, this is stuff. And what was most important to me was my music, and it was taking up my whole car. And so now it's all on MP3, so
There
now
you
I
go.
can take
Yeah.
more
Oh, yeah.
things. But that was a crisis moment that made me really get clear about what's important to me. And it's not all my stuff. There's a few pieces that are important to me. But I found my music, my photo albums, a couple of gifts. So when we think about things, what's the most important? It really doesn't have that much to do with the shell. It has to do with our stuff and which is the most important stuff, because most of us can let go of a lot of our stuff.
Yeah.
So I feel we jumped a little bit ahead because we started talking about what the concept of home. And I get that. How do we get there? We've got the estate planning done, so we've got some people picked, but we still, have we decided, or do we need to decide who the executive officer is that's going to, organize and make it all work? Is that something we need to get
I
taken
think
care of?
having that conversation, sometimes you find, oh, I didn't think my mom would want that, or I can't believe my daughter doesn't want me to stay home, or, that's where some of this, so maybe having these conversations help you decide, maybe having my daughter or my son isn't going to be the best option for me. Having someone else that can step in and make sure that my wishes are followed.
That they understand, again, it gets back to values, that they understand your values and your priorities, and they're able to make the decisions that you would make if you had to, or you
Got
could.
it.
So that's core. And then education, I think, is the next piece. Gosh, some of these places, these communities have like excellent food. Now, true, we're in the time of COVID, so it's a little weird to go tour communities. But over at different points in time, it's easier. But I think education is really key here. So just go take a look, and people are like always amazed. Wow, this is really nice. I would move in here.
And sometimes they can go, if they have an in-home caregiver or family member, whoever it is, they can go have lunch with their caregiver in the facility, or they can go, just
the
depending
community?
on. Yep. Yes, in the community, and kind of get used to it. But it makes it a little less intimidating that they're going into the community
Right.
and seeing it ahead of time.
So for Mom, she was struggling with the concept. She knew that's where she was going to end up at some point. The timing was not her best. She didn't like the timing particularly. But one of the things we did was we were going to be in Utah for a week, my wife and I, and we've got kids down there. And we said, how about, Mom, we buy you a week at this place that she looked at, and she quite liked it. And so we bought a week. She went and stayed there for a week. Now, that almost backfired because the first thing she did was breakfast the next day with a lady that was 110. And of course, what do they always say? When you help them to move in, they go, I'm too young to be here. So that was the first thing she said. Well, I'm too young to be here. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's true. So 110, her son was almost the same age as my mom. And he would come and get her up in the morning and bring coffee. And I'm like, I hope this works.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so education, but she did actually realize, I think in that experience, that it was not a home. That
It was
she
not a facility. She's not being housed.
Right.
Well, yeah, but we called them homes, and
Yeah.
it was the home, you know.
Uh-huh,
And
right.
every little town had one. Here's the home,
Right.
and we talked about it in those terms. And we have bad memories of some of those
Right.
homes.
Oh, yeah.
And so they do too, and so
Right.
that's how they see it.
Exactly.
So I love that, and get them out, and I would guess that who helps them to do this might be important as well, because if you've got the son, I'll pick on boys for a minute, who's going, Mommy, you're not going to be here. And of course, he says that because he's not going to be a caregiver
Right.
either. I think that would be. Again, I don't know who's coordinating this, but
Right.
it seems to me that would be important to understand who's helping to make that
Yeah.
decision.
And just having the patience, because it can be frustrating for when they're like, you have to go, we don't have another choice, or, you know, just the patience, because if you get into a power struggle, then no one's gonna win in that
Yeah.
situation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and sorry to bring it back to values, but back to values again, that there are some really nice, very contemporary communities.
Yep.
And that is not what Mom would like at all. Mom would like something a little more homey,
Yeah.
a little
Yeah,
large.
yeah.
I did that with one community when I brought my mom down here, and I thought, this is where I want to live. And she goes, it looks like a ski lodge. I don't want to live there. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was like super sweet.
Yeah, and
So,
my
but
mom would be looking at, oh my gosh, how much does it cost to be here?
Right.
Well, Mom, but you can, no, she
Yeah,
could,
no.
but no, she's not gonna
Right,
live there, because
right.
that's not who she is.
So that's one of her values,
Yeah.
is I'm still gonna be thrifty. I need my needs met, but, you know, spending all my money because this is a place you would like me to live is not okay.
Yeah,
So yeah, it gets right down to that, and
You gotta
it's,
think about the spouse, what their current diagnosis is, or maybe what they might be facing. How important is it that you guys are housed together?
Right,
and,
very
you know,
good.
what you're looking at with that as well.
yeah, and so,
or not.
Yeah.
Yep.
a
That's
spouse,
a vacation for some.
yeah, a spouse who is the caregiver for someone with, you know, an Alzheimer's dementia, there is a real pull to be together,
Yes.
and you can't do that everywhere.
No.
And so that would take, from what I've seen, that takes a little extra work to
Yeah.
make that
Be
happen.
creative.
Okay, so patience, and stick-to-itiveness. There's a better word.
That's a great stickiness, I don't know.
Yeah, but hanging in there and not giving up,
Right.
which is not the same as patience. Patience is being, you know, gracious and, you know, but hanging in there to make sure that it gets done, that's not everybody's skill set either.
Right.
And so that would be a family situation. You tag team.
Right.
Your turn. You know, I softened him up.
exactly.
It's your turn. You go on in there.
Right.
For my dad, it would have been, I know which daughter. You know, there was the daughter, and that would have worked just fine. With Mom, I think I'm it with Mom. Not that I necessarily relish that, but I think a little bit that's the one. Not that I'm the favorite son or anything. But this would be
But she
my.
knows you're
Right.
protective, you wanna take care
Yeah.
of her, and you're gonna make sure she's okay.
Right.
Well, and I think that's important. I thank you for saying that. I think that's really important, because I've seen parents who felt like they were just being put
Yeah,
into a home.
Right.
I hate that too.
Yeah.
I'm putting them in a facility.
Yeah.
No, and
Yeah.
they don't want to be put
Right.
anywhere.
Right.
So that might be really important to get the right combination of kids and parents
Yeah.
and resources together to have that conversation.
Right.
Okay, so if we start back soon enough, then we should revisit this on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
I think you said normalize it.
Yes.
Normalize that conversation.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
And a suggestion from my side would be normalize helping with the finances.
Yes. Absolutely.
And I don't see that a lot.
Right.
no.
Not until dad's gone, if he was the one doing the finances, or mom's gone and she was the one doing the finances. I find that with dads, they get a little protective about you knowing what's going on,
Yeah.
right? If they were the one doing all the investing and there isn't, a couple $1 million there, then they're feeling a little, I don't think you need to know this, but boy, do they.
And even if that starts with just a conversation with, okay, you're gonna go meet with an attorney who's gonna help you plan for this, and then you'll know what it is, and so you can start sharing, I'm gonna have in-home care, or I'm going to go to, a community, whatever it's gonna be, starting there, at least someone knows, and that information is organized there, and they know who that's gonna go to, and then it gets a little bit easier to then bring in that person that's gonna help.
Yeah. So if we start small, maybe the favorite daughter, and there is some disagreement in the family over who the favorite daughter is. All of the kids except her think she's it. She's going, I'm not the favorite. Yeah, you are. So now we expand that, and this I see as man, I'm not sure I want to be there, but thank goodness we have you. Is we bring in the rest of the kids. This is now a family situation, right?
Yeah.
And we have that initial conversation, and then we set up. Yeah, we're going to talk about this from time to time.
Which avoids huge, disastrous blowouts with families that can last forever because all of a sudden there's a disagreement about what we're going to do with mom or dad, when we get to that
And
point.
or their stuff.
Yes.
I have a story to that extent. A gentleman that I know, his wife was the healthcare power of attorney. Mom had a catastrophic event while she was in the hospital. The one daughter was out of the country, and the communication was not great. So my friend's wife had to make a decision. And she disconnected mom because that's what mom wanted. When her sister got home, you murdered mom. And this went on for years. You murdered my mother. I don't know what you were thinking. So absolutely, I think you hit that on the head by having that conversation and making sure that we call a family meeting after we've put together a plan, and I have mom and or dad tell us,
Yes.
what are we doing?
Yes.
And I loved it because I had one gentleman, I was not looking forward to that family meeting because, one, it was an interesting family. He was very interesting. We put this together. It's a really interesting plan. Part of it because of other things that he'd done, but part of it because just the way he was. He introduced that to the kids, and he said, and I loved it, this is my plan. If you got a problem with this, you better talk to me while I'm alive. Do not take this out on mom or your sibling who's going to be, administering this. This is my plan. You got a problem, you come talk to me. And they didn't in that meeting. And I asked him later, and he goes, no one's ever come forward. And talking to one of the other kids, he goes, no, I think everybody's good with it. All they needed to hear was, it's Dad's plan.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And we see that a lot where they take it out on the oldest
Right.
son and or daughter because they're now the personal representative or whatever, and they were mad at mom and dad, but you can't be mad at mom or dad. So then you take it out on your sibling. So I just see that as being a huge part of the discussion is everybody's now involved.
Yep.
We've had that conversation. And then maybe one of the positives out of the COVID is that you can have family meetings now from anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
We don't have to actually all be in town to do that, which is fine if we do.
Right,
I have no problem with that. But we could have an annual meeting.
Everyone can feel involved in it and definitely
Right.
be a part of it.
Well, and the other piece I'd like to mention about that is family meetings really, to make the most effective, shouldn't just be about mom and dad.
Right.
It should be everybody's having these conversations about this is what I want, this is what I don't want, because any one of the family members could be affected sooner rather than later.
That's correct.
And so it kind of levels the playing field, because we're not here to talk about the problem people, mom and dad aging. We're sharing what's important to us in our lives. And so everybody knows, because somebody's going to have to make decisions for you too. So then you need to take that out and include those people as well.
It's a lot easier to make those decisions when you're empowered to do so. This is my plan. This is what we're doing.
Yep.
You've got the buy-in there.
I love the book title, Talking About Death Won't Make You Die.
Oh, you don't know that. You don't know that.
Well, I'd be dead a long time ago, because they laugh in my family. My reading list is death and dementia. And,
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
So far I have neither,
Well, as far as you know.
as far as I know.
We don't tell her.
She said blissfully. No, that is so true. But I've had clients couldn't sign that will because they knew they were going to die as soon as they signed the will. Well, you know, I've signed the will. They're not dead yet. That was 20-something years ago. Anyhow, really interesting. So now, one other thing I would like to throw into this is I have a sister who lives a mile from mom. And so she's the one. She gets the call. She's done a relatively good job of keeping us all posted, right?
Nice.
Yeah, you know, here's what's going on. There's a newsletter that comes out from the assisted living, and she forwards that to us, and then she, gives us the updates. Here's what's going on. I highly recommend that.
Communication is an amazing tool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
About
it
that.
really makes things go a little smoother when people talk to each other real time.
Well, especially for her, because you were talking about what did you call it, the seagull effect, where the kids come in from out of town and they just can't believe how bad mom's got. You know,
Right.
they don't see her on an ongoing basis. They saw her.
Those are our emergencies. Well, mom said she's been taking her medication, but they're all here, and there's bottles all over the place, and there's meds still in the med box, but none of the days are the same, and it's usually holiday times that get those crisis calls for us.
We get the kids all together. Now, if it's a son, then that's what you see. If it's a daughter that's helping out, it's usually a little better, but you still get a son. I have stories. The one that came in, sat in on a family meeting, put his feet up on the table, and he was wearing $500 or $600 cowboy boots.
Nice.
And I helped him to get his feet off of the table.
Sweet.
Anyhow, it's a longer story than that. That come in and say, mom's terrible, we got to do something about it. And of course, their concept of doing something about it is to put mom into a facility.
Right, take
That's
over.
how they handle it.
Take over.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that is so unfair
Yes.
to the daughter, and usually a daughter, sometimes a daughter-in-law, that's been over there every day,
Yep.
checking in on mom, making sure that she gets some lunch.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden the seagull flies in, and it's not the way they think it should be. So I could see that kind of an ongoing conversation would be huge.
Well, and there is two sides to that situation too, which is when you're in warm, tepid water that heats up, you don't notice how hot it's getting.
Yes.
Or some of the changes. And so there is some benefit to the outside, the folks that haven't been there as much. But how you handle that gets back to good communication skills. Let's talk about what I see versus you see. Because, we do miss stuff when we're right in the heat of it, and we don't notice the decline. So, if we're going to be a team, we're going to play as a team, we're going to respect each other and respect that happens, with hot water versus tepid water. We're not going to jump in the hot water.
You've had the same experience that I've had, where maybe a niece and a nephew, and they come, you get to see them after 4 years, and they're 6 feet tall. And the mom was like, "Oh, yeah," because they were there the whole time.
Yeah.
They didn't recognize this abrupt change, and so very good. So let me see if I can have a couple of takeaways, and then I'll ask you for your takeaways. One thing to think about is values. Where are we with values? What's important to them? And I think that'd be an interesting conversation, because they may say that the house is, when in fact it's not really the house.
Right.
It's the memories.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
This is where we gathered.
Right.
This is where I raised my kids. And that can move us forward a lot better than, it's got to be the house.
Yeah.
And then, Dee, both of you mentioned this, the communication part. Be really well for us to develop communication skills, because we don't. How many HR departments do you think you'd have if everybody communicated?
Right. Not many.
Yeah.
It'd be a whole different job.
We could drop that off pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Takeaways.
I think just planning and looking at all the resources out there and making sure that you've kind of got a plan in place and you know what supports you need, so you can make sure that plan carries you through. You've got a little safety net. Okay, if this doesn't work, this is our plan B or C or D.
Yeah, but you can't have a plan B or C unless you have
A plan
A
A.
plan.
plan A. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and one of the other pieces for me is that when things change for us as we get older, we want to make sure we hold on to who the person is.
Yes.
Right.
Because that makes a huge difference for the people that are around them, being able to connect with them, being able to sit and have conversations, because, whether it's in a community or it's in home, is that we want to give the caregivers some education about who this person is and what they've
Match
done.
them
Right.
with a good
And
caregiver.
so
Absolutely.
the match is really key to, yes, it's amazing, and Sarah does such a good job with that. But I think having a bio sketch of the person's life, and you can write it with them, so maybe they tell you about stuff, but to have a decent bio sketch that you can then give to
Right.
whoever's coming into the home or wherever they've moved to, so that they have more information. Because, quite honestly, my dad looked like a curmudgeon as he aged, and he could act like a curmudgeon. But when you read his bio sketch and what he did, and everybody was like, oh, MG, this man has led a very full and comprehensive life, and maybe I don't need to look at him like a curmudgeon anymore. This is a human being. And so to have that piece, I think, is way under appreciated by families. And it's fun to do, and especially if you can do it with them, it's very fun to do.
Excellent. Very good.
And the other thing, and we were kind of laughing about it in here, because I have developed this tool, is like, here's the stuff for my care plan. And what do I want people to know about? If you're going to take care of me, I need to be by a window with nature. I prefer these kind of drinks. Do not turn the lights on overhead at night to check if I'm wet or not, because I will bite your head off. So low lighting. So there's things to be able to document our preferences and what will keep us happy, because there may be a point in time in our lives when we can't communicate that. So let's do it now. And it's fun conversation. I do these briefings with a group of people, and it's always interesting. Oh, really? I'm quite the opposite. Well, how do we communicate with caregivers if we haven't told them ourselves?
Nope.
So-
Nope. Got it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both.
Thank
you
you.
for being
Thank
with
you,
us
Mark.
today. And yes. Amen. Amen. Thank you. All right, we're going to take a break, take a bio break, be back at the top of the hour. We're going to talk about preventing elder abuse with Detective Ashley Turner. And so really more good stuff to talk about.
Yeah. Being aware.
Yep.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Sarah.